Chapter 13. In lieu of the fact that no one had been able to solve the Brown House mystery, it seems ironic that I shaped up into a real detective and was responsible for solving a mystery that had been bothering our household for some time. Perhaps a professional investigator like Papa wouldn't formally credit me with actually solving it, but he would have to admit that I had indeed played a leading role. It began when Mrs. Williams told Mama that something strange was happening on our roof. I know that in California you may have things fluttering from your chimney, but here in the Northwest? Mama reported Mrs. Williams's observations to Papa, of course. Papa was annoyed that Mary Bird kept such a watchful eye on our area, although I don't know how he expected her to do otherwise. All she had to do was stick her head out her parlor window and crook her neck kitty-corner, and she was looking down on our roof. Of course, the ivy tree blocked part of the view, as did the maple trees on the lot above us, but for all intents and purposes, she could see enough to be satisfied that our house hadn't burned down or slid down the hill. Papa's final summation was, well, Mary Bird probably saw me when I was up inspecting the shingles a while back, but I'm not so small that she couldn't identify anything she might have seen there as being me. She insists there is something moving up by the chimney. Well, tell her it's the stork, Papa said. It better not be, Mama said, but if it is, I want you to go up and shoot it. In the meantime, I wish you'd go up and investigate. Well, I'll get the ladder out one of these days. Papa never allowed himself to be forced into action by Mrs. Williams' warnings. Of course, we children offered opinions. That is, everyone but Dor did. She hardly uttered a word. She just looked slightly smug, or was it disinterest? Had I tried to analyze it, I would have probably concluded that she was too young to have an opinion. Dunny had suggested that the culprit on the roof was probably Santa Claus. How can it be Santa Claus when it's the middle of summer? Flora rotated her head, a warning that believers were present. Dor for sure, Robbie probably. As for me, I was teetering on the edge of doubt, but figured it was better to be safe than to be confronted with an empty stocking on Christmas morning. Dunny acted serious. Well, south of the equator, Santa Claus comes in the middle of the summer, Kat said. That's dumb. You mean they have Christmas in July? No, summer is in December. That's where the people walk upside down. How can people walk? It was just too confusing, so Dunny summed it up. Santa Claus can do anything. I'm sure that Dunny didn't believe in Santa, but he wasn't going to let his beliefs interfere with his chances of advancing an argument. Port had a more logical opinion about the movement on our roof. It's a ghost from the Ivy House. He was a specialist on ghosts. One day I heard Mama express an idea to Papa that scared the socks off of me. It can't be Franny on the roof walking in her sleep, can it? For some time, Mama and Papa had been concerned about my sleepwalking, which, according to them, was one of the serious after-effects of my scarlet fever that the doctor had warned about. I'd get up in the middle of the night and prowl around the house. Often they would find me in the morning asleep on the davenport, and once even in the closet off the bathroom. Their big concern was that I would climb out of the dormer windows which opened onto the roof. Another thing that Mama figured dated back to scarlet fever. I wet the bed. She told Papa, I ask her every night before she goes to sleep why she can't get up in the night and go to the bathroom. Maybe she hears my voice in her dreams and gets up, forgets why, and just walks around in her sleep. Papa saw the logic. Sounds like Franny, all right. Mama had asked the doctor what could be done about my problems, but he was not an expert on the after effects, so naturally he didn't have a cure. Mama had to come up with her own, the standard formula for discouraging negative tendencies in children. Fill their little heads with frightful admonitions and scary tales. There was the story of a man who walked in his sleep 10 blocks away from home and was found in a tree with a Doberman pincer yipping up at him. Another man fell in the sewer. Then, there was the lady who climbed out on the roof, where the most terrible thing happened. She took off all her clothes. If I remember right, when she realized her terrible predicament, she had the decency to jump off and kill herself. Although these scary stories didn't keep me from walking in my sleep, they had one positive effect. They gave me such noisy nightmares that Mama and Papa could hear when I was up and come to my rescue. I confided in Flor, what if I walk on the roof and fall down the chimney? Then we won't have to fill the sawdust hopper for a few days. What if I take off all my clothes? Then you'll just have to jump off and kill yourself like the lady in the story did. The roof mystery continued, but one day I got a clue. It was after Papa had declared that Mama should make us wash some of our own clothes so we would appreciate the big washes that she had to do. I hated washing out my clothes, and wondered why Dor seemed to have developed a passion for it. I also wondered that, although Dor was doing a lot of washing, I never saw her clothes on the line. Then one day, I saw Dor coming out of the bathroom carrying a dripping load of clothes. Instead of heading for the stairs and the clothesline, she headed toward the big bedroom. I followed her. She went right to the dormer window and opened it. Shifting the articles to keep the drops from falling on the floor, she pulled out the 2 drawers that were built underneath the window, and using them as a step stool, she began to clamber out. I was shocked. I had often stood at these dormer windows and realized that it would be possible for a man who was fixing something, the chimney perhaps, to climb right out onto the roof. But for a little girl, I grabbed her by the leg and demanded, "Dorothy, come back here, you're going to fall off." She began to struggle, signaling that this was all very hush-hush. I knew that. Opening the windows was prohibited. She replied with her usual comment, "Oh, come on, Franny, don't be a scaredy cat." I knew I should call Mama, but I'd been sworn to secrecy. Therefore, I did the only thing there was left to do, climb out the window and follow her. Then I realized that Dor was heading up to the most dangerous area of the roof. "Dorothy, let's go the other way," she scoffed. "Then Mary Bird would see us, dummy." I saw no other option than to follow. When I came to the edge and looked down, I panicked. It was 3 stories to the ground. I felt as if my stomach was going to jump right out of my mouth and go rolling off the edge. It might even roll right on down the hill, across Seward Park Avenue, down Morgan Hill, and finally end up in the lake. I had a vision of Papa goading me. "If there's anything to fall off of, Franny'll do it." "Let's go back down," Dor called out and revived me. "Come on, scaredy cat." I started up. The footing was perilous due to the loose granules on the asphalt roof, but Dor, being a lightweight, bounded up like a young rabbit. I, the turtle, you might say, was like Mama spinning the wheels in the gravel. How am I going to get back down? Dor led me along the ridge to the other side of the chimney. Surprise! I was indeed surprised. Dor had rigged up a little clothesline out of a piece of twine so flimsy it could scarcely hold up its own fray. She began singing a patternless tune like Mary Bird and hanging up her muslin bloomers. Actually, they were mulin, but from the time Dor was little, she had called them muslins. She explained, "After I wash my muslins in the bathroom, it's too far to go to the back line. It's closer to come up here." I wasn't going to argue. I just stood watching her in amazement. Little Dorothy, the delicate child, the one doctors examined with clucking noises, and insisted that she should be sheltered from excitement and get plenty of rest. However, that wasn't Dorothy. She wasn't sugar and spice. She had an inner drive and determination that even I, who knew her best, found hard to cope with. She loved to tell me about her escapades, dramatizing every scary detail. Worst of all, she usually demanded that I be an accomplice. It would have been fine if I could have simply ignored her, but she wouldn't allow it. Because my feeling of adoration was so strong, I couldn't say no. "Why don't you sit down and enjoy the scenery?" she said, patting a roof shingle next to her. I was close to fainting anyway, so I sat down. I didn't enjoy the scenery, though. "How long have you been coming up here?" She ignored my question, went to a little niche in the chimney, and pulled out a wad of cotton. Inside was her amethyst ring. Our birth rings were the only decent things our Wisconsin relatives had ever sent, except for our fur collars. She explained that if anybody robbed the house, they'd find my jewelry, but not hers. Then, as if I wasn't already filled with enough dread and horror, she whipped out a half-smoked cigarette. "Where did you get a cigarette?" Neither Mama or Papa smoked. "I clean out the ashtrays when we have a party." She took out a match and lit up, puffing furiously. "I already got the habit." "Dorothy, you'll burn down the house." "No, I won't. I always use my ashtray." She flicked her little finger over the chimney. She wanted me to try it, but I'd had enough. I began inching my way to the section that I'd already determined was no wider than Papa's razor strap. By some miracle, I made it down. Strangely enough, I allowed myself to be talked into going up again, several times. I even took puffs off the cigarettes, and became so dizzy that I had to hang onto the chimney to keep from falling off. Dor liked to sit and enjoy the scenery. "Look, you can see all over. You can even see the brown house. And you can see where you ran into the mailbox and broke your nose." With that, Dor began to laugh. She always laughed at my calamities. I didn't need any reminders of the sledding accident that had caused me much more pain than a broken nose. Papa had finally agreed that Flora and I could go with the boys, after the neighbors pointed out it was safe because cars couldn't go out when it was slick. The only problem was the abrupt turn at the bottom of the hill. Why Papa hadn't investigated the turn before the fact, I don't know, but suffice it to say, he hadn't. His instructions were that we should sled only on the bottom half of the hill, which was not so steep, and that we should keep our hands and feet on the sled and not under the runners where they could be cut off. We had begged Papa to buy us a beautiful silver streak like the boys had, but Papa was not one to bow to every new fandangled fad. Back home on the farm, they used homemade articles, and by gum, what was good enough for Wisconsin was good enough for Washington. We had been on the verge of appealing to his passion for safety, but changed our minds. If we tell him that, he won't let us go sledding at all. On that fateful day, Flora and I had been taking turns on the old slug, trying to ignore the goading of the boys who claimed that we shouldn't be allowed to start halfway down since it could cause bad collisions. If you go any slower, you'll be going backwards. How we envied the boys who came streaking down from the top with complete abandon, always confident that they could make the dangerous turn at the bottom. Even before they came to the stop, they could jump off and run back up, pulling the sleds with just one hand. It took both Flora and me together to pull the old slug up the hill. It was to be my last run. I was almost frozen to death, and besides, I urgently needed to get home to the bathroom. I can't say I was feeling confident, but I had managed to make the turn at the bottom on 2 previous runs. I decided to build up more speed. Unfortunately, the sled got going so fast that I lost control, skidded across a frozen fish pond, and crashed into the mailbox. I lay there howling in great agony. I had extreme pain in my back and chest. Flora and the gang of boys arrived and found me covered with blood. Flora took one look and ran toward home. In the meantime, the owner of the mailbox came out admonishing me, but when he saw my condition, he got me into a car and took me to a doctor who determined that I had broken ribs and a broken nose. The family always claimed that this event is what made me look like Nero, which I did. After Papa had done a complete investigation, he went to the hardware store to buy a new mailbox. When he came home, he had bought us a surprise, a new sled, not a silver streak, but a toboggan with the front end curled way up. To our complaints, Papa said it was like the toboggans used in Alaska to haul freight. With me laid up, Papa had decided that Morgan Hill was too dangerous for girls, so we were back to being towed behind his car. Flora was so mad she didn't speak to me for days. One beautiful spring day, as Dora and I climbed out on the roof, I noticed that the maple trees had leafed out considerably. "Hey, now Mary Bird won't see us if we go the easy way." Dora was skeptical, but I had already started inching my way along. We got to the top, Dora hung out her wash, we had a puff on a cigarette butt, surveyed the world, and then started down. I was almost to the corner and ready to head for the dormer windows when I heard Mama calling hysterically from the backyard. "Mrs. Williams says you're up there. Come down this minute." We came down, although it took me more than a minute. Of course, I got all the blame, as usual. However, it was a relief for me that the ordeal was over, and I realized that, in a sense, I had benefited. If I ever did go sleepwalking on the roof, I would know my way around. Dora treated it as a tragedy. "Now I have to hang my clothes on the line on the back porch," she wailed. When Papa found out, I realized why his razor strap had occupied my thoughts so much as of late. A pretty mean way of rewarding me for solving the big mystery.